This time we made a small adjustment, just slightly. We specifically invited Khenpo Sodargye from Larunga Five Sciences Buddhist Academy to talk to us about Buddhism. Let me introduce Khenpo Sodargye. He is from Ganzi, Sichuan. He attended Ganzi Normal College in Sichuan when he was young. After graduating, he became a monk. And after ordination, he immersed himself in the study of Tibetan Buddhism. He's also very knowledgeable about Chinese Confucianism, Taoism, and traditional Chinese culture. He has visited many top universities, such as Peking, Renmin, Fudan, and Nanjing University, where he has given many lectures that have been very well received by students. Khenpo Sodargye's academic work, on one hand, he has translated many Tibetan Buddhist scriptures into Chinese. As for my own impression, the comprehensive history of Buddhist scripture translation, an important aspect in Chinese Buddhism, began translating Buddhist texts from Western regions. Then, Buddhist scriptures from India were translated as well. The next possible trend in Buddhist studies should translate Tibetan Buddhist scriptures into Chinese. This is also a very important way for us to understand Tibetan culture. Khenpo contributed this. He promoted Confucianism by lecturing on standards for students. He has done much work on Han-Tibetan cultural exchange. Today, let's discuss altruism in Buddhism. This topical truism, considered as one of the most fundamental and essential characteristics of Mahayana Buddhism, let's listen to how Khenpo interprets it. Altruism as ideal of Mahayana Buddhism. All right, now I'll hand the time over to Khenpo.
Just now, Professor Chen said, Khenpo Sodargye. My name is Khenpo Sodargye. I really admire Professor Chen. For many years, over the course of time, he has supervised PhD and graduate students in Buddhist studies. He also earned a PhD in Buddhist studies. I once went to Thailand, probably in 1999. At that time, many university students in Thailand, there were PhD programs in Buddhism and many professors supervising Buddhist PhD students. Back then, I wasn't very familiar with universities on the mainland in my heart. I'm very envious of the conditions at universities in Thailand. How wonderful it would be if the academic world could conduct deeper research into Buddhism. I have always had a truly deep, genuine, and heartfelt yearning in my heart for this. Now, indeed, in many universities, there is very thorough, extremely in-depth and comprehensive research and study of Buddhism. At the same time, I've heard that at Shandong University, there are also studies of other religions, such as Christianity, Taoism, and so on. And these areas are also researched in great depth. In fact, with any religion, we all respect each other. Personally, I feel the same way. And to be honest, I really admire this. Originally, I was just a very, very ordinary monk. Nothing remarkable at all. I was simply interested in many of the ideas in Buddhism and Confucianism, that's all. I really haven't done any deeper research at this point in time. Of course, Shandong can truly be called the homeland of Confucius and Mencius, the land of propriety and etiquette. It should be said that this is undoubtedly the original birthplace of Confucianism. Confucius, Mencius, Yanzi, and others. The 5 great sages of Confucianism all appeared here. And the benevolence taught by Confucianism has many similarities with the altruism promoted in Mahayana Buddhism. So today we are here to present to everyone a particularly simple method to introduce the altruistic motivation and altruistic actions in Buddhism. I think Since everyone present here is interested in Buddhism, PhD students and postgraduates researching, as well as many professors who supervise doctoral students, you must be very familiar with the basic ideas of Buddhism. Personally, after many years of dedicated and extensive research and study in Buddhism, what conclusion have I come to? The so-called Buddha is actually not what some people nowadays claim it to be. A legend or a mythological story, such as he was a real historical figure who actually appeared in human history. A truly remarkable, influential, widely respected and noted historical figure. This historical figure should be recognized not only by us Buddhists, but also by people in the academic world today who have no choice but to acknowledge him. As everyone knows, recently the Buddha's tooth relic, when it was enshrined in Myanmar, was received by the president of Myanmar as the main host, along with about 6,000 senior government officials, and was welcomed at a location. Over 2,000 people, in fact, went to the airport to greet it. During the 48 days it was enshrined there, many visitors worshipped every day. Everyone should be aware of this. A few years ago, when the Buddha's finger relic was enshrined in Taiwan, everyone must have heard about it. In just 11 days, there were more than 100 people each day, and during the entire period of enshrinement, indeed, over 1 million people came to pay their respects. That's roughly the number. I think that throughout human history, although there have been many truly great individuals, many remarkable giants who have made indelible contributions to human society throughout history, if we analyze this from a certain perspective in a very fair and objective way, even just a single tooth or a finger bone of a person has never been venerated by so many people in later generations. I think that now, as humanity has entered the 21st century, it's impossible that all these people are fools, or that they all share the same belief. Therefore, as Buddhists, we can confidently say with full assurance that in this world, it is the so-called Buddha who has truly completed the path of wisdom in life. With selfless, great compassion, with selfless love and an altruistic spirit, he spread his teachings among humanity. This is, in essence, the concept of the Buddha. Every part of the Buddha, including a single finger joint, is treated with such deep respect by later generations. As you all know, I just recently visited Famine Temple in Xi'an. They have Buddha finger. Now, the state has invested about 1.2 billion yuan to carefully construct the magnificent underground palace and the Hijisheli Pagoda. As I was paying homage, I felt an incomparable sense of faith arise within me. At the same time, I also thought about the figures of this world. Up to now, humanity has produced countless truly notable figures. But among these people, including scientists from various fields, do they get veneration from later generations? In the scientific community, as we all know, people greatly admire Newton and Einstein. The tomb of Sir Isaac Newton, the renowned scientist and mathematician, can be found located in Westminster Abbey. There, along with Shakespeare, the great playwright, and Darwin, the renowned naturalist, as well as Churchill and Newton, they are all enshrined closely together in a grand and historic royal church. Although people come to pay their respects every day in people's minds, they do not receive the kind of special blessing that we Buddhists often speak of. This includes Einstein as well. As everyone knows, when Einstein died, according to his original will, which he gave to his eldest son, he wished nothing of his body be preserved, and everything returned to the four elements. But later on, there was a certain man, a person by the name of Harvey. In order to provide material for future research, he secretly and extremely quietly held on to Einstein's brain. Not only did this not receive the kind of public approval he had imagined, but it was also condemned by many people. In the end, for 42 years, he had to keep it hidden himself. When it was finally discovered after a long search, although later generations did conduct some research on this brain, to some extent, it is now kept in Princeton Hospital, but after all, not many people actually know about it. I was thinking, even though his brain was actually divided into 240 pieces at the time, and made into many experimental samples, and even separated into many parts in about 10 jars, if this brain were to be shown to the rest of the world, would it really receive admiration? Of course, perhaps as a Buddhist myself, I might be expressing a kind of partiality, a special reverence and admiration for the Buddha. But to speak from a positive perspective, I honestly think everyone should take a moment to reflect on this. I believe that many of the graduate and doctoral students present here, in fact, in our world now, there truly exists certain things, possess great value, and are revered by so many people. It's not all just so-called superstition, as some people might believe. There must be some deeper meaning. And what exactly is that meaning? But I think what's important is that it's worth exploring and worth researching. That is the 84,000 Dharma doors that the Buddha taught us at that time. And in the Chinese Tripitaka, there are so many scriptures, Vinaya and Abhidharma texts, the Tibetan Tripitaka. I used to open the Ratnakuta Sutra and the Avatamsaka Sutra. And the more I opened them, the more I studied and read them, in the end, I felt as if I had entered a truly incredible world. So for many university students, you too, including Buddhist studies like the Diamond Sutra and Awakening of Faith in the Mahayana, many of these courses are being offered. And in the process of taking them, you'll find that the writings of ordinary people in the world are very different from the words of the Buddha. All of us have received some education, and whether it's university courses, high school courses, or elementary school courses, after finishing them, they are not necessarily things we will always need to read or revere. But Buddhist scriptures are quite different. Just look at the brief content of the Heart Sutra. The brief content of the Diamond Sutra, anyone who reads it after reading it will find endless meaning to savor, boundless benefit, and unmatched blessings and strength. This is the inconceivable power and virtue of the Buddha, a kind of might contained within these texts. On this point, I think anyone with wisdom certainly has no doubt and cannot deny it. No one can ever erase this fact. Absolutely. Therefore, in this regard, I think we must first understand what exactly is meant by the so-called Buddha. What kind of being is he? He indeed has many different histories and origins, each reflecting a unique aspect of his background and contributing to the person he is today. But more importantly, for us humans today, what kind of image does he actually manifest? And what kind of specific role does he play in this context? Among those present, many are Buddhists. Some truly believe in Buddhism, while others may not be believers. But I think we definitely need to study it. When we study it, we need to understand what Buddhism really is. It is not just a belief. It should be considered an education in wisdom. I think that within Buddhism, whether it's astronomy, geography, or the humanities, all worldly knowledge and learning are truly and fully encompassed. If it were merely a religion, or simply, in essence, just dogmatism, then it would only contain just one aspect. So sometimes I think in Buddhism, without relying on any instruments, even when looking at certain aspects of astronomy, when later generations look at the Buddha's wisdom, it truly and utterly seems unimaginable. We know that some people feel that due to a variety of complex reasons and circumstances in reality, some of our rich traditional culture and thought for a period in the past was indeed subjected to some blows. However, this has caused substantial harm to humanity. I think we, the later generations, are the victims, you could say that. Why is that? Because in our minds, besides money, status, and physical beauty, or some forms of realism, as it were, there are no traditions left. Of course, I admit that very few traditions, it's not necessary for you to keep practicing them now. For example, all the traditions from the Tang Dynasty nowadays, in this era of globalization, in a global village, truly, it's not necessary for you to always maintain an ancient image. But some aspects of humanity, mainly the virtuous side, especially the education of what is truly good, particularly the important aspect. Indeed, we certainly need to maintain, we really need to turn our attention back to the deep, profound teachings and wisdom of our earliest ancestors. I'm not particularly clear about how things are on your side regarding the study of traditional culture and Confucian thought. Actually, I've always believed that it isn't a profound, comprehensive philosophical system like Buddhism, but indeed, in our worldly life, when it comes to interacting with people or filial, benevolent, and observing proper etiquette, it holds great significance indeed. Nowadays, many people, perhaps due to their environment or various other reasons, they have a particularly poor ability to accurately and effectively distinguish who is genuinely good and who is not. There was a time before when something called thick black theory appeared in society. The thicker your face becomes, the better. As thick as a city wall would be ideal. And the blacker your heart, like coal, the better that was considered a good thing. For a while, people really believed that the worse a person became, the better they were. Quite a lot of people actually followed this particular theory and then started doing many truly shameless things. At that time, maybe when we were in university or in any institution of higher learning, we might not have learned much of the good side. But I personally believe that what is genuinely and truly unparalleled about Buddhism, it can also be said that Buddhism's incomparable quality is its altruistic spirit. In the ancient and revered Buddhist scripture, known as the Sutra for Dharmas, it is also clearly mentioned that all those in the world who possess wisdom should give rise to the unsurpassed bodhicitta. I wonder if everyone here is truly familiar with what is called bodhicitta. If you have a relatively comprehensive understanding of bodhicitta, I think in the future, whether you serve society or seek your own path in life, it shouldn't be very difficult for you. Why is that? Because nowadays, most people in our world are all confined within a circle of self, always centered on themselves. Of course, many people might think I should be responsible for myself. I should be responsible for my family, my society, every aspect of my life. But this kind of responsibility in reality is not what we actually call true value. Why is that? Because when our value is expressed in terms of genuine benefit, it is in benefiting others. In fact, so-called bodhicitta, if you look at it in the broadest sense, is the mindset of wishing that all sentient beings attain perfect Buddhahood. But this is the highest level of us here, let alone even those who study Buddhist scriptures or practice them throughout their lives. When it comes to visualizing and wishing to benefit countless sentient beings, they might think, I want to help all sentient beings. And that doesn't seem very hard. But when you try to consider every sentient being, for example, your enemies or people you simply don't get along with, one by one, if you want to make them happy, to ensure they are always blessed with happiness, some people might find that hard to accept. This is very difficult to achieve. So the so-called genuine bodhicitta that we talk about now actually, regarding bodhicitta, I don't want to elaborate too much today. We are all here, even if it is just one class, gaining some understanding of a truly significant piece of knowledge. That is very important, something to be remembered.
What we call bodhicitta, as I just mentioned, is a technical term. It is also a specialized term within Buddhism. But if we don't understand this, we won't be able to study Mahayana Buddhism. I've met many renowned scholars coming from various backgrounds who have dedicated their academic careers to Buddhist studies. They can say Bodhicitta verbally, but not to mention actually practicing even the literal, straightforward meaning of the words. They still can't truly or fully explain it, not at all. This is, quite frankly, rather unfortunate. If it's just an ordinary person or a typical monastic, it's understandable. If you don't know what the so-called bodhicitta is, they simply haven't had the opportunity. But for us, who are in higher education specializing in Buddhism, if someone like that is asked what bodhicitta is, and they treat bodhicitta as just a superficial phenomenon, which honestly is actually quite unreasonable. First of all, when we carefully study it, we can see that bodhicitta is the very foundation of Mahayana. Many people confuse bodhicitta with compassion, kindness, or a charitable heart. Mixing all of these together is simply unreasonable. We must explain it according to its own, especially profound and vast meaning. When explaining it this way, in other words, we should say bodhicitta is divided into aspirational bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta, which everyone here should be familiar with. Aspirational bodhicitta means making a vow to benefit all living beings all across the world. It's like when we want to do something good, it's that kind of intention. As for engaged bodhicitta, not only do you make this vow, you also need to actually put the 6 perfections and myriad practices into action. This is what we call engaged bodhicitta in Buddhist practice. After we fully comprehend this kind of intention in theory, more clearly, it is best to put it into practice in our daily actions. In fact, the academic study of Buddhism and the actual practice of Buddhism are best closely integrated and mutually supportive. Many scholars in the present day can only talk about it verbally when discussing this topic, but when it comes to actual practice, they really haven't practiced even for a single moment. If you truly practice this great compassionate bodhicitta, it benefits world peace. It has truly great benefits and notable merits for the world. Moreover, it also brings great benefit to your own body and mind in every aspect. If a person meditates on bodhicitta for even a single moment, the merit accumulated thereby is immeasurable even to the Buddha. If we are able to contemplate and cultivate bodhicitta even for a single instant, even though an instant is very brief, if we can meditate on bodhicitta in that moment, then according to Buddhist teachings, the merit of this practice is immeasurable, even by the Buddha. But perhaps this sounds a bit lofty, and we may not immediately grasp its true meaning. When it comes to our physical well-being, nowadays, even some of the most prestigious universities, such as Harvard, Princeton, and Cambridge, and so on, have all established some meditation societies in their respective regions called meditation societies. What do they practice in these meditation societies? They focus on cultivating compassion. Cultivating compassion is not very difficult. Any student can do it. From what I know, there are some university professors abroad, as well as some elementary school teachers. They all encourage children to truly learn about compassion. When it comes to learning compassion, they usually spend about 10 minutes in the morning each day. Everyone sincerely and thoughtfully cultivate compassion. So-called loving kindness is wishing for all beings to attain happiness. As for compassion, it means wishing for all beings to be free from suffering. When you cultivate this kind of compassion in your mind, on the surface, it appears to be a form of Zen meditation. But if you contemplate for about 10 minutes in the morning and another 10 minutes in the afternoon, then after a week or two, when tested once again with scientific instruments, as usual, the person's mind has already become gentler and much more balanced. People who used to have particularly bad tempers after practicing compassion become extremely cheerful and relaxed. So in many hospitals in the United States and elsewhere, this is called relaxation therapy. This is actually a practical method of cultivating bodhicitta. I hope that in our higher education institutions, we don't rely solely on theoretical approaches. In purely theoretical terms, people become a so-called, in Buddhist circles, we call them Dharma slicks. In the secular world, they're just old slicksters. Anyone can talk the talk. I've met many brilliant people like this, including PhD students and postdocs. They can really write about it and talk about it fluently. but their own minds are fundamentally not genuinely actually connected. The essence of Mahayana Buddhism, some even become more and more prejudiced as they study further, harboring slander about the Buddha, history, and the most profound Buddhist teachings in the world. Often contain some slanderous words, such as insults, etc. These are all completely unreasonable. In my view, I believe that we should embody great compassion through our own practice. There's a particular story that I really, truly like from Tibetan Buddhism about Atisha, the founder of the Kadampa tradition. You all know the story of Atisha. This story is very, very inspiring to me. Perhaps after hearing it, some of you here today may not feel much, or perhaps you will feel something. But I still want to briefly share the story of Atisha here. Atisha was a prominent figure originating in the 11th century CE. He was a prince from eastern Bengal. He was supposed to inherit the throne, but later Tara gave him a prophecy of his future, saying he had been a pandita, a wise scholar, for 500 lifetimes. A pandita is like what we call a doctoral advisor, a person of great wisdom. But you have not yet truly attained enlightenment, nor have you truly understood the meaning of life. If you truly wish to attain enlightenment in this lifetime, then you must give up the throne and follow the path of renunciation. After hearing all of this, in the end, he ultimately did not inherit the throne and completely gave up his future royal kingship. He began to follow a very famous Indian master of that time named Rahula. During the time he studied under him, he learned all of the Tripitaka. He mastered all of the Tripitaka. In fact, he had already been a Pandita for many lifetimes before. He had a photographic memory for all kinds of knowledge, but in the end, he only acquired knowledge. Knowledge was just knowledge, and he was simply himself. There was no real connection or understanding between the two. Later, he kept thinking, the real meaning, the true truth of all this knowledge I have learned, when will I fully understand it, become completely enlightened? While circumambulating the Vajrasiyate in Bodh Gaya, India, some of you may have been there on pilgrimage. While he was circumambulating there, he saw two very beautiful girls having a conversation. They were talking. If someone truly wants to attain the state of enlightenment, they must cultivate bodhicitta sincerely. At that moment, he felt that these two people were also talking about bodhicitta. The next day, under a bodhi tree, or rather near this tree, there was also an old leprosy patient, as well as a beggar, and an elderly woman. In the conversation between those two as well, they said, if someone truly wants to awaken to the truth of life, they need to cultivate bodhicitta. Later, at that moment, he thought, actually, whether it's people of higher status or lower status, everyone from top to bottom is talking about bodhicitta. Only he, in this world, did not understand the true importance of bodhicitta, at least. That's what he thought then. But then, on the third day, he was inside a temple hall. He saw a little bird perched on the knee of the Avalokitesvara Guanyin statue. Then, the statue seemed to tell the bird, if you want to attain the state of enlightenment quickly, you must cultivate bodhicitta. At that moment, all the worldly doubts he had before completely vanished like smoke, and he was suddenly enlightened. He now understood more deeply the importance of bodhicitta. He'd awakened to the nature of mind. He had to study and practice bodhicitta. He had to find a wisdom master. Later, he traveled to Indonesia. There, he studied under Master Jinju for 12 years. He practiced continuously and later received many important prophecies from holy beings. Originally, he could have lived to be 92 years old. But if he were to come to Tibet, for example, at that time, during the early period of Tibetan Buddhism, Buddhism had been destroyed by Langdama. Then later, King Yeshi invited him to Tibet. Fascinating stories emerged. At that time, he received a prophecy. If he came to Tibet, his lifespan would be shortened by 20 years. If he did not come, he could live to be 92 years old. Ultimately, in the end, after much thought and reflection, he chose to come to Tibet to spread the Mahayana Dharma. He also founded the Kadampa school and composed the lamp for the path to enlightenment. The current stages of the path to enlightenment actually originates from this important, notable work. Everyone should be aware of this. So the methods for cultivating bodhicitta that he taught have been passed down right to the present day. Moreover, in Tibet today, these altruistic mind and bodhicitta have been perfectly preserved in the lineage, teachings, and all the stages of practice. All of these have continued to be transmitted, whether in monasteries or among lay people. On this point, speaking personally, I am quite familiar with many aspects of both Han and Tibetan Buddhist cultures, but I truly feel that the teachings on bodhicitta, the instructions and pith teachings on bodhicitta are especially, without a doubt, exceptionally profound in Tibet. This is due in part to the Venerable Atisha, as well as Shantideva, Chandrakirti, and many great masters from India who directly brought these teachings into Tibet. To this day, this has remained an especially excellent lineage. Many scholars, both in China and abroad, have come to understand this only from a theoretical perspective. At the same time, many intellectuals may not truly understand them if they only study these teachings. All phenomena are impermanent. Everyone can understand the concept of impermanence. But when you are truly faced with the major issue of life and death at the end of your own life, merely reciting the principle that all phenomena are impermanent is of little use to many. Many of the principles in Buddhism, I hope everyone will genuinely apply them in their actual conduct and embody these principles in their daily lives. When we put these teachings into practice, our actions should be aimed at helping others. In fact, whether you are a teacher or a student, no matter what position we hold in society in the future, at the very beginning, our mindset should be, I want to help others. This kind of attitude is especially important. If we lack this mindset, nowadays, in many schools, both teachers and students are focused on money. This is a particularly very negative and concerning behavior. I've met many people, and many think this way. Of course, this is also a kind of realism. They care about themselves. What will happen to my marriage in the future? And what about my job, my career, and my work life? All of their thoughts, maybe more than 90% of the day, are primarily and intensely focused on themselves. Many people never even consider, how will I promote traditional culture in the future? When I enter society later on, to the best of my ability, how should we thoughtfully and carefully treat this society and all forms of life in the world? Do something truly meaningful. We do not be attached to our own clothing or to our own food and shelter. As an ordinary person in the world, this is probably impossible to achieve. In fact, the more you think about yourself, the less real benefit you actually gain. But if our hearts are more focused on others, the more we will gain benefits in all aspects. Nowadays, some news media often report on many facts about the decline of morality and ethics. If these things appear before us, on one hand, our sense of community is basically not what it used to be. In this regard, in our Tibetan region, this is indeed the reality. For example, if someone is unfortunately run over by a car on the road, then I believe, and I can say this with confidence, without a doubt, that now the vast majority, over 99% of all Tibetans, would definitely stop their cars immediately and do everything they can to save that person. Not to mention ordinary people, they will stop and spare no effort to save him. Even if a yak is injured by a car, people would go and try to save it as well. Having this kind of genuine compassion and kindness is truly especially important in our lives. If we lack this, then the altruistic spirit that humans should possess has already been lost. I once read about the greatest figure of the 18th century, Patrul Jigme Chogi Wanpo. In Tibet at that time, he was a household name known by everyone. He was a widely respected and renowned master throughout his field, truly remarkable. He was famous as Hanshan master in Han region. Once on his way to a Dharma assembly, he saw a poor widow with her 3 young children standing quietly nearby. She headed to Shik for a Dharma assembly. When he saw this, he felt compassion in his heart. The master was a wandering monk, and others did not know his true identity. If she had known, she wouldn't dare let him help her. But along the way, he kept looking after the widow's children and helping her beg for alms. all the way until she reached her destination. Later, the woman realized, oh, he's actually such an extraordinary master. From this small story, I saw something important. Nowadays, many people, including those of us here today, we will learn about altruism. You probably won't try to test me what I would actually say about the so-called altruism. Each person should reflect on it in their own heart. Whether you are on the road of life or in your daily life from this moment forward, no matter what you are doing, when you encounter others, will you help them? Most of us might help our relatives, friends, or people connected to us. If he's in trouble, we go rescue him. This is a person's basic, fundamental, and essentially positive and kind side. But when it comes to people unrelated to us, we don't help them. Some people even, when they see other living beings, including animals and such, simply ignore them. I believe that this reflects a genuine moral decline in our society today. This is how I see it. Because people don't realize that the suffering and the happiness of every living being are in fact the same. I also really like happiness, and I don't want to experience any pain. And aside from us humans, all other sentient beings are the same. Few religions and worldly views, including atheistic perspectives, do not truly understand the value of life. This is something I hope many people will find worth exploring. What exactly is the value of life? Some time ago, we were in a certain place where many intellectuals gathered to explore and study the value of life. At first, many scholars, due to their past environments and various reasons, simply didn't understand, and it seemed that only human life has truly meaning, while other lives have no true meaning. This is a kind of acquired education, meaning it is not innate, but rather something that we have learned and absorbed. If you grew up with a different kind of education or perhaps in a different environment, you would understand that every single life, regardless of what kind it is and where it lives, when it is harmed, you would feel pain for it. You really would. So this issue is something that many of us, intellectuals today, you really ought to pay very careful attention to this honestly. And the very core meaning of Buddhism is about understanding the true nature of life and reality, guiding followers toward wisdom and compassion. All sentient beings in the boundless sky, to be truly free from suffering and attain happiness. This does not exist in other religions or other doctrines. It may seem impossible to achieve, and some might think that this idea isn't so great. But perhaps we still need to continue to carefully and thoroughly study this issue in even greater depths. If you truly study it, only then will you really understand the true merit of bodhicitta. It is stated in the Buddhist scriptures, if the merit of bodhicitta, this enlightened mind, were to take physical form, even one as incredibly small as a mere square inch, it would undoubtedly fill the entire boundless expanse of space, and nothing could contain it. I believe it is mentioned in the Maharatnakutta Sutra that if bodhicitta were to have a physical form or perhaps a specific color, even the expanse of space can't contain it. Why say this? When we humans today analyze things from a truly objective perspective, only then do we realize the importance of altruism. If you yourself encounter difficulties and suffering, and someone else saves you, a complete stranger saves you, only then you realize, wow, it turns out that bodhicitta truly possesses such immense merit. In this way, the illnesses and troubles that reside deep within our hearts can be thoroughly and completely healed. In fact, bodhicitta can fully cure the ailments within our minds. It allows all sentient beings to experience a kind of happiness. I remember that there is a scripture, one that I once read, called the Mahayana Sutra of Fearless Bestowals Questions, in which it is said, the merit of bodhicitta is a supreme and wonderful medicine capable of curing all diseases and bestowing happiness on all sentient beings, including all worldly pleasures and timeless joys. Through bodhicitta, bodhicitta is the best and most wondrous medicine. Bodhicitta can help to heal and cure the illnesses within the minds of sentient beings. Moreover, it can bestow upon all sentient beings genuine and lasting happiness. The meaning of this scripture is something that everyone present needs to explore in detail, because the study of the Tripitaka is not quite so simple as it may seem. On the surface, ancient texts like the Diamond Sutra seem so brief, as do some other important texts, including, for example, the Prajnaparamita Sutra, as well as the Kaishitigarba Sutra. On the surface, it doesn't seem like much, but throughout history, wise people and scholars have racked their brains to study them in depth. During their research, what did they discover? Some real value in it. In this world, many people ask, if Buddhism is truly so beneficial and good, then why is it that more people don't actually believe in it? Actually, whether it's faith in Buddhism as a spiritual path or the discoveries that have come from its teachings and practices, any truth, after all, is always grasped by only a few people. Whether it's scientific knowledge or the humanities, any kind of knowledge, it's impossible for everyone to fully understand its meaning. It's like the precious treasures in our world. There aren't that many people who truly understand the value of these treasures. However, many still believe in Buddhism. I saw in a certain statistic that, including China, there are now over 100 million people who believe in Buddhism. If 1.3 billion people, over 100 million, counted, then the number of uncounted believers should actually be even greater. Among students and intellectuals, if we truly want to study some aspects of ancient culture in the future, Buddhism may be truly indispensable. If you don't at all understand Buddhism, then much of the research into ancient culture really does lose a lot of its depth, significance, and importance. This point is clear in many articles and in the research process of many people. Because Buddhism touches on all aspects of the truths of life and the universe, if we want to find these truths, we may need to thoughtfully invest our wisdom on a much deeper and broader level. Otherwise, our understanding will be very superficial and shallow, especially when many of us are faced with life itself. We all have to face death. We must face illness. And we also have to encounter all kinds of suffering in this world. At such times, Buddhism is especially extraordinary. This is true of Mahayana practices, like self-other exchange, practices of equality between self and others, and Mahayana practices valuing others over self, and also the teachings from Atisha, recognizing kindness, remembering kindness, and repaying kindness. If you truly practice these important principles in your daily life, without discussing future lives, this life, your attitude and perspective on life will undergo a significant transformation. Some people might think, I shouldn't study too deeply. If I go too deep, will I end up becoming a monk or maybe going off to live in the mountains? Some families are very worried when someone studies Buddhism, including some PhD or graduate students. If you enroll in a course on Buddhism, your family might become concerned, wondering if you will ruin your future because of it. But actually, in Western countries, studying religion and history is considered the most profound field. Generally, those who study economics or trade are only focused on money. In my view, studying Buddhism does not necessarily mean you have to become a monk. In the 1980s, media and movies have perhaps somewhat tainted our thinking. Why is that? Many TV shows and movies show that when people face setbacks in life, it seems only in temples, no way out. They hit rock bottom. Do they become monks? This is a kind of negative influence brought to us by the media, including film and television in particular. But actually, in both Tibetan Buddhism and Chinese Buddhism, if we look at history, most people studying Buddhism have been lay people. Monastics are also 2,500 years ago. Shakyamuni Buddha was in India. Most of them are lay people. Because of this, the Buddha and the Fourfold Disciples, the sutras he taught to lay people are everywhere and extremely abundant. Therefore, I think we should have a kind of Buddhist faith. Of course, if you have your own faith, that's better. Even you don't have a faith, if you truly understand the theories, authentic teachings of Buddhism, you will see that they can positively benefit both your life and society. Especially now, what we lack most is the so-called true selflessness, really, truly benefiting sentient beings. This is what is called the Mahayana Bodhicitta. Why is it called Bodhicitta? Bodhi refers to Bodhisattva, the meaning of a Bodhisattva. A so-called Bodhisattva is a courageous mind, a brave consciousness. Why is it courageous? Because giving up your concerns and wholeheartedly dedicating oneself to benefiting others. This is something that ordinary worldly people cannot do. Only the Buddha can do this fully. He not only fully and deeply comprehends the truth of all phenomena, but also devotes all his actions, efforts, and energy entirely to the important work of helping other beings. If there are such people in any organization or department, they would likely be especially admired. This is what is meant by a bodhisattva. Some of us often think that so-called bodhisattvas are just the statues in temples. But they are not bodhisattvas. If those were bodhisattvas, then the terracotta warriors, the many life-sized statues made by Emperor Qin Shi Huang would also be bodhisattvas. But these are not bodhisattvas. When we talk about bodhisattvas, we often say that someone does a lot of good deeds and genuinely helps others. A living bodhisattva. Actually, in this world, no matter what your status is, if you have an altruistic heart, even if for now society subjects you to all kinds of attacks, insults, or contempt, possible as the social atmosphere now is not good. People who do good deeds are often ridiculed by others. This happens among our students. Those who truly love and appreciate traditional culture, or who often and willingly help others in their daily lives, are frequently looked down upon and scolded by many ignorant people around them. Such exist. This is due to a poor social atmosphere, not a lack of conscience. We should always act according to our conscience and benefit all living beings in the world. For many of us college students, altruistic heart is, without a doubt, more precious than any property or money. In my whole life, I have one altruistic heart. This truly altruistic heart has absolutely never been harmed or damaged in any way. I believe this is the most meaningful and valuable truth in our lives. And wherever I go in the future, I will do my best to act in this way. There is a Buddhist monk living in Qinghai. I heard he's a true bodhisattva. Later, I tried to understand why he was considered a bodhisattva. He is truly content living a simple, uncomplicated life. As long as it involves others, he's always willing to help. Even if he is wronged by others, it doesn't matter to him. He has always lived this way. In fact, among people, there really are many such examples. Society may not necessarily recognize them, but in fact, for us, they should be worth learning. A lot of education nowadays is primarily focused on how to be successful, in particular, right from the start. The so-called measures of success or failure are things like your status, wealth, and so on. But in many schools, they don't talk about genuine altruism. If there is no altruistic mindset, then one has nothing in common with Mahayana Buddhist thought. Even some of traditions in our traditional worldly culture are not even a little bit close. So today, I also want to take this rare and valuable opportunity to share with everyone. The so-called altruism, of course, encompasses a vast array of contents and carries profound and rich implications. It's actually very difficult to really summarize it for everyone in such a short amount of time. But it is necessary to have an altruistic mindset. An altruistic heart is like a precious and rare jewel, endlessly shining and constantly radiating a beautiful, gentle light. It can dispel the ignorance and darkness within the hearts of humans and all living beings. It gently reveals to us the true and meaningful path in life, guiding us forward. That's all. Let's have a little exchange. All right.